Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. Look at the full house we've got this week. And some of my favorite people to talk to. This is a good week for me. So we actually have two releases this week, and then Emily is joining us. Her release was last week, and she wasn't able to join us then. So we've got Lexi Post, Aviva Orr, Kate Archer, Emily Murdoch, Elizabeth Heights, and Anna St. Clair with us. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, thank you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I love it when we have busy weeks of Dragonblade because it's like there's a book for everyone. It's just, it's just the best. So let's go ahead and dive right in since there are so many of you. And we're going to start with Emily's release, and it's Half a Chance, and it's book 4 in the chances.
Book 4. So this is Brother 4. So I know a lot of people get very worried about diving into a series midway. Fear not. Every single one of these books you can just pick up and enjoy. But because it's 4 brothers, if you're looking for that family vibe, I would suggest pausing this video, immediately going to Amazon and reading all 3 books of my series. No one else's, just mine. All 3 books. And that will bring you up to speed of the kind of background. But you can just pick it up. We are meeting Frederick Chance. Now, bless him. He is the half-brother of the Chance families. He is the evidence of the other 3 brothers' father's affair. So he's not the most popular guy in the family. There's a lot of tension that's been kind of brewing between the brothers. They don't really see him quite as part of the family, but their father acknowledged him, so he's still got a title. It's all very awkward. And he's spent most of his life, Frederick, kind of, half in and half out. He's kind of in the family, but he's kind of not. He's got a title, but it's only a Viscountcy. He's invited to some things, but he's not invited to everything. And he absolutely hates it. He knows that his inclusion is a pitiful gesture, and that is not what his pride wants to allow. On the other hand, we have Miss Edith Stewart. She has been declared the flourishing rose of the season. She's the most eligible, the most beautiful, and she's absolutely sick of it. She is sick of it. All people do is look at her and see this very two-dimensional, one-dimensional beauty. No gentleman wants to actually hear her opinion on anything. No gentleman remembers her name. They're just swooping around her. And her father is very eager to make a match, a very impressive match. What her father is not interested in is discovering his daughter in the rather amorous clutches of a recently legitimized Viscount. And all of a sudden, Frederick, who really wasn't looking for any more scandal in his life, and Edith, who is absolutely looking for more scandal in her life, have a situation where they have to decide how they're going to play this. And it all kind of kicks off from there. So you've got kind of wallflower, but imposed wallflowerness, which is something that I haven't really done before. You've got slightly rakish, but also slightly wanting to better himself and let people see who he really is. A family of people, especially the 3 brothers, who absolutely are going to meddle and make life even more chaotic, and an overprotective father who, bless him, is his own worst enemy.
Well, it sounds like so much fun, and I love big family saga romances.
I've never done brothers before, and I don't understand. I'm about 70 or 80 books in, and I'd never done a set of brothers. I'd done sibling groups, but never all sisters or all brothers. And I've had a huge amount of fun doing it because there's such an opportunity to explore different kinds of heroes all within one family who obviously do not get on and do not understand each other, and at times hate each other, but would kill anyone who dares to cross their siblings. And that is a very interesting and fun dynamic, and a very big challenge, I think, for a heroine to come into that sort of family, because you're trying to understand, okay, so you say you hate each other and you refuse to pay cards, but you did punch that guy last week because he looked at your brother wrong. So how do I navigate all of this complexity, which has been so fun.
It's a whole Lord of the Flies component when you get a certain number of male people together. They just act differently than they do when there is a civilizing influence.
Yeah, and I think what's fun over these 4 books is we kind of start off with the brothers a little bit standoffish from each other. They've all kind of grown into very different adults. They haven't quite learned how to navigate all those childhood grievances that, of course, they haven't let go of, because where's the fun of that? And by the time we get to Frederick's story, there's been a little bit of better understanding, but they're now trying to navigate that. But actually, okay, if we all say that we get on, what does that look like for Saturday night dinner? And what does that look like now that you're married, but I'm not? It's really complicated, and it's pretty fun, of course.
Yeah. Well, and you have wives, so you have sister-in-laws, and like a whole different,
and very, very different personalities. So as I say, we're dropping into book 4 with the previous wives. One is a blue stocking mathematician who's incredibly bold and incredibly direct. We've got a wallflower who has a stutter and is really passionate about getting a point across. So gets really irritated when people speak over her, trying to supply her words, because she's got her own words. She just takes a little bit longer to get there. And we have a woman who had a pretty big secret and rocked the family boat. And people are still kind of finding their feet after that particular marriage. So poor old Frederick, who's been kind of involved in these family shenanigans, but kind of not, because he's still being held at arm's length. When his time for scandal comes, he's rather surprised at the response individually of each of his 3 brothers.
Cool. Well, there's lots of good stuff to look forward to there. And there are a bunch more brothers, aren't there? We have many more to come.
No more brothers. We've done the 4 brothers, but I've had so many people love these books and love these brothers that I've decided we're going to do something that I've not done before. We are generation jumping, and we are going to look at the next generation and all the cousins of the 4 brothers in early Victorian England, which is going to be raucous, because we've got a little bit more freedom for women, a little bit more opportunity for women, but also a little bit more expectation. And so the 4 brothers, and this is not a spoiler because it's right there in the blurb of the next book, which is up for pre-order. The eldest brother of our original 4 decides to retire his title of Duke, and he scandalizes the ton by giving his eldest son the title before he dies, because he wants to shock young Thomas into a life of responsibility. And of course, it goes horrendously wrong.
That works out well. I'll look forward to the chances coming up then. Awesome. So the next book that came out this week, or the first book that came out this week, is actually a book, and it's and it is Forced to Marry the Earl, and it's book 2 in the Earls of the North. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it's a forced proximity, forced marriage kind of book, arranged marriage kind of thing, on account of the forced to marry the Earl.
That's exactly what it is. Yes. Title gives it away there. I keep losing connection, so I'm really sorry if I disappear.
Oh no, you're fine
during this. But yeah, we've got forced marriage and enemies to lovers as well, which are two of my favorite tropes. So we're going all the way back to England in the 13th century to the north. Obviously, series gives that away as well. Sort of wild and tumultuous. We're in Dartmoor Castle, which is famed for being England's most impenetrable fortress, and it's defended by this mighty army headed up by Otto, who is the hero. He's highly respected, but also highly feared warrior, man's man, sort of used to from one battle to the next. And the story begins with his arranged marriage with Ariana, a peace treaty between 2 neighbouring estates who have long been enemies. The final battle saw the death of Otto's father become Earl upon his father's sort of early and unanticipated death in battle. So he's now working to establish his reign in quite difficult circumstances, and he's got this new bride. So all her life, Ariana's been a pawn in the games of men, and especially in the games of her cold-hearted father. He's put her down. And she believed him when he said, no man will ever love you. But she didn't believe she didn't believe him when he told her that she was good for nothing. She's got this strong kernel of self-belief. And she's like, well, I'm here now. I'm in Dartmoor. Don't particularly want to be here. But whilst I'm here, I'm going to actually achieve my own goals, which is to rescue her aunt, who has been held prisoner in Dartmoor Castle.
Oh,
Ariana's aunt is a healer, very powerful healer, and she failed to save Otto's father, and this was construed as sort of a deliberate act. So she's in prison. Ariana's intent on finding her and rescuing her. So right from the start, this marriage is really complicated. They're both strong-headed, they're both determined, and they're used to sort of working on their own. And Otto's also struggling with working out what kind of a leader he wants to be. his father's example was to lead by violence and fear. And Otto's had this reputation all his adult life of being this really fierce and warrior. But he's starting to think, well, I really want, his father's death in battle, and he sees that was kind of senseless. He's gone from sort of one battle to the next, and he's like, well, surely, is there another way? Is there a more peaceful way? So yeah, he's going through quite a sort of crisis of confidence, really, especially because of the way he's been raised, which can be a problem throughout the time periods. He doesn't trust anyone.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult to form a relationship with his new bride when he's been raised to trust no one. And there are rumors circulating that someone's plotting against him. Someone actually is plotting against him. And of course, it doesn't take him long to suspect Ariana, who is plotting against him, but not in the way that he expects. So we've got sort of two lonely souls coming together, both very much with their own baggage. They're not expecting to find love, certainly not with each other, but they do. Like, their connection to one another is almost instantaneous. That's a physical attraction, but also sort of an emotional connection, because they are very similar. They've been raised in similar circumstances, and they sort of see themselves in one another, but they have a lot to navigate before they get their happy ever after. And it's quite a ride. There's lots of sword fights and intrigue and family betrayal.
It sounds like it. We have dueling plots against him too, which is always fun, because you can never tell where one line starts and the other one stops. So very exciting. Cool. And then we get more,
that's it.
We get more Earls.
And get more Earls. Yeah. So we get to meet the Earl of Book 1, who is Guy. He's present at the start of the book. And we also get to meet the hero of Book 3, whose name is Angus. And Angus actually plays quite a leading role in the next series that I'm working on as well.
Oh, awesome. And how many more books are there in the series?
There is one more book in this series, which is coming out in April, called Taming the Earl.
Awesome. So there's still more Earls to look forward to. Fantastic. So the next book that came out this week is the Lion's Den book, and that's Aviva's book, and it's The Imperfect Lion, which I'm looking forward to find out how she's imperfect. And I'm sorry about the visitors I have.
That's okay. So it's my second Lion's Den book. I love writing for the Lion's Den series. It's such a fun series. And I decided to tackle the difficult subject of male infertility, which is why the book is called The Imperfect Lion, because during my research, really interesting article I read about, it's actually titled, they are called imperfect men. And that was the name given to Jennifer Evans. She's a scholar. She's the scholar who wrote this article. And that was the name. She cited a medical book from the 17th century. Because when I started writing the book, I thought, did they even know about male infertility? Can they even write about this? So all I wanted to find out was whether they knew. Well, they knew a lot, long before.
Wow.
Even the 17th century. And they were called imperfect men. So that's where I got the name from. And I thought, how difficult, what a demoralizing name for, it's so at the time, men had to be, it's a different time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what a difficult thing to deal with. So it's very, but my character is, he was married, and the reason why he knows, I didn't want to go through all the medical stuff that they talk about. Mm-hmm. I don't have time for that in Lion's Den book, but he knows he's infertile because he had his wife who died. She had been married previously and had a child who died. So he knew that it was him. He just knew throughout his life. He knew, and he was really loyal to his wife, and he really loved his wife, and he'd come to accept that he would be happy just with her, and that his hair that would be next in line. They would find that person, and he was fine with that. He came to accept, but his wife died basically of a brain aneurysm. I didn't say that in the book because they wouldn't have known that then, but suddenly like that, and he just became really depressed, and he wasn't interested at all in being remarried, but he the silence became too much, and it was so lonely that he started going to the lion's den just to keep himself busy. He wasn't there doing all the games or anything. He was kind of just an observer, just there to kind of get away from the silence in his home, the loneliness that he was feeling, right? And of course, Mrs. Dove-Lion sees he's an earl, she sees an eligible bachelor. She sees somebody and she's studying him and she's watching him, and then she's presented with a young woman who comes to her for help. She was betrothed and her fiance died, and she is pregnant, and she's only very early. And it's a huge challenge for her because what can you do with a pregnant young, you can't really say. She doesn't want to trick somebody into marrying her in case there's a problem. So she knows this Earl is perfect, Earl of Knox, she knows he's perfect. This would be the perfect match for him because, he can have a family again, he can be happy, but it's very difficult for her to get them together and convince them. And there's a lot of problems from the past that come up as well, and some bad people too, some bad actors. So it's a big challenge and quite an emotional read. And it's not a long book, it's a novella. So a lot happens. I don't want to give too much away, but a lot happens in the story. It's basically packed with a lot of emotion and action, things that happen, events that happen. Eventually, of course, they happily ever after, but it takes a challenge, a big challenge for Mrs. Dove-Lion to get them there. But she uses, she's very good about the way how she goes about and does it. She's very clever about it, and she uses her skills very well to get these two together.
It's got to be really
just to involve somebody not that great, but she manipulates it in a way that it all works out in favor of the two. So it was fun to write.
Challenge to do that much stuff in that shorter period of time. I think that's got to be one of the challenges of writing in the Lion's Den series is getting all the story in the amount of time that you have to get them in. So.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and and it worked out. It happened to worked out to be a great. I love the story, so it worked out in the end to a happy ending.
Awesome.
And
this is your second Lion's Den book?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
This is your second Lion's Den book?
Yeah, second one, and second one, and I'm currently working on a mystery series, but that won't come out till next year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the next book that came out this week is Lexi's book, and it's Disarming the Baron, and it's book 3 in Courting a Curious Lady. I love the title of this series. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yes, for those who don't know, the reason it's called Courting a Curious Lady series is because my heroine from another series, this is all based on Louisa May Alcott's Little Women and Little Men and Joe's Boys. She opened a school, not for boys, but for women of the peerage who wanted to learn like the men did at Oxford and Cambridge. And her school's a little, people aren't really sure what to make of it yet. So one of the women in the school, whose name is Mademoiselle Lisette Fontaine, she's not there because she's a peer. She's there because she helped save the owner's brother-in-law, let's put it that way. Her grandmother put her in there to keep her away from men. It's not that she's really into men. It's just that she knows she's not a peer, and she's trying to avoid marrying one because she's not a virgin, and that won't go over really well. So she's studying each woman in the Curious Lady series has a specialty, and it just turns out that Lissa's specialty is weapons. And part of that is because she grew up in France during the Napoleonic Wars, and she met the hero when he was there saving the brother-in-law of the owner of the school. And the two of them were friends. So she was like 17, he was a little older, and he calls himself Mr. Taylor. Well, it turns out he's not a Mr. He's actually a Baron, but he's the fourth son, and he considers himself expendable. He's already got 2 older brothers with kids, and, everybody's happy, and he just does his own thing as his mother encouraged him to do. So what he does is at one point he was a Bow Street runner. At one point he was in the army, and then now he does investigations for the peerage. And he's in the middle of this investigation. He's told to go to the school to find to talk to the weapons expert. And for the first time, he sees Lissa in a dress, because in France she was in pants and dressed like a boy just to be safe among all the soldiers running around there. And he is not really sure what to make of her. So this is like my first ever friends to lovers trope. I've never done this before. And I wasn't sure if I could. But it turns into this really fun investigative romp. And basically what Lissa does, Anthony Taylor is kind of, he's a free spirit. And he knows Lissa from what she used to do. He respects her. He respects her knowledge, but now he's seeing her as a lady, so he doesn't want to treat her like he used to. He wants to treat her like a lady. She's having none of it. And it gets to the point where he needs, for this investigation, to go to a house party that's only for the peers and their mistresses. And she tells him, well, that's fine. I'll just be your mistress. And he's like, I don't think so. Of course, she manipulates him. And then all kinds of very interesting things happen at the house party. And of course, there's a secret room, and there's all kinds of interesting things. And the enemy, the lord they're investigating, turns out to be a lot worse than they thought he was going to be. And things get really scary. And then there's like an escape and a run, and it's just like an adventure. So it turned out, but it was really fun to see how the friends to lovers trope might work. Mm-hmm. And I literally went into writing it not knowing how they were going to finally figure out, where that happily ever after was coming from. And I have to say that Lissa was the most clueless until like near the very, she actually had someone pointed out to her. She was so clueless that she cared for him, but he learned a little bit earlier. He figured it out, and was there to protect her when everything hit the fan. So it was a lot more fun than I expected, and I got to bring in, of course, a couple of the other curious ladies that are going to have their books. I'm excited because this is the Curious Ladies series is based on basically Joe's Boys from Louisa May Alcott, which had like 12 boys and 3 women, 3 girls and the whole thing. And so I'm not really sure how long the series is going to go, but I just signed the contract for 3 more books.
Fantastic.
So we know that it's going to go at least 6. We'll see if it keeps people's interest. And but right now I have 3 other ladies already set up, and all of them were in, of course, this book in a little bit. And the next book is all set up and ready to go with a Marriage of Convenience. So,
yeah, fantastic. I love Friends to Lovers because I love that, and I love that he falls first too. But I love that moment where somebody's got to be brave enough to say, "This is more."
Oh, he doesn't say it. He knows better, because if he says it, she's gone.
Well, fantastic, and I'm glad we have so many more to look forward to. So.
Can't wait to write them.
Awesome. So the next book that comes out this week is Kate's book, and it's the first book in a brand new series, and it's Lady Ferocity, and there's a tiger on the cover, which I love. It came across my desk. It's like, there's a tiger on the cover. It's fantastic. But it's book 1 in a series of senseless complications. Did I get that series title right?
Yep. A series of senseless complications. Yeah.
Senseless complications. Can you tell us about the book and a little bit about the series?
Yeah, so it's 7 daughters of a duke, so there'll be 7 books. And they have grown up very remote in the Yorkshire Dales. They don't really have a neighborhood. They only have just a little village associated with the estate. Therefore, they've just sort of been on their own, following their own instincts, which are not very good. The Duke is kind of childish. He makes up lies just because he thinks they're funny. He likes to insult people and just see what they're going to do about it. He's just completely off the wall. And all these girls, that's really all they've had to look to for guidance, aside from the housekeeper, who sort of acts as mother, and she loves these girls to pieces, but she is pretty diabolical. There is a reason why they don't have a butler, because she will just drive them right out of the house. And so Every time they come to town for a season, their aunt, who is a countess, sort of slips a butler into the house, and then she just promptly gets rid of them in all kinds of diabolical ways. So, you know, these girls want to fit into society, but they're all a little bit off, and he is way off. And so the first book is Felicity, who's Lady Ferocity. She's got a real temper that she's worked very hard to control, and mostly does, sometimes not. And she goes to Almax, and she sees this very reserved, kind of stern, I think he's an earl. He doesn't become much of a character. But anyway, she thinks, oh, like he's the man for me, almost because he doesn't pay much attention to her, but he is not at all interested. But Percy Stratton is looking for a way to convince his father that he's trying to court someone and he's madly in love, but she won't have him. So he convinces Felicity, like, listen, the only way to get this guy's attention is for him to see other guys interested in you. And I can be that. You know, so they sort of go from there. And yes, there is a tiger on the loose. He plays a pretty big plot point, which people did own tigers. So. Yeah. So it's not out of the question that somebody, you know, might get mauled by a tiger. So it's really fun, you know, Regency rom-com.
Yeah. It sounds like so much fun, and I love it. I love the way you always have your main characters, and then there's usually more eccentric older characters that have influence on the main.
I always have a servant with a point of view. I think that's critical. It could be anybody. The housekeeper has her point of view because it's really critical to see her internal workings of why she's about to do this terrible thing. And she always ends up feeling at some point that the hero has slighted her girl, which totally sets her off. So then she does something to him. And then when she realizes she was wrong, she really just brushes it off. She's like, well, that's water under the bridge. But she just does it repeatedly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as long as she doesn't feed him to the tiger, I suppose we're okay.
Everyone lives, but yeah.
How many more books do we have in this series?
7. Yeah.
7. That's right. You said there were 7.
Yeah.
There were 7 sisters. Very cool. So we have a chance to get used to everybody and get to know everybody and then see everybody again, which is one of my favorite things. Awesome. Well, I'm anxious to find out. I'm anxious to find out about the tiger, and I'm anxious to find out about the new series, and hopefully to laugh a little bit.
The family's hilarious. I mean, they make up their own game called Fact or Fib, and they just, you know, so they'll invite the hero to dinner and then like subject him to this Fact or Fib thing, which they decide if you were lying or not. I mean, it's just so funny.
Well, it sounds like such a romp and something to look forward to. So awesome. So, the last book that came out this week, last but not least, is Anna St. Clair's book, and it's To Win a Viscount's Heart, and it's book 5. Is it book 5? I had the sound right, but not the right number. In the Rakes and Mayhem series. Can you tell us about this?
This is for friends to lovers. So it's sticking with the foo-foo sound. Yeah, I've really had kind of fun with this series. I'm gonna sign a contract, I think, for the next 3, so there'll be 9 in the series. That's what Catherine has worked out with me, and so I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it's coming. So there'll be 9. And what I've tried to do, I had 3 rakes initially with the Rakes of Mayhem, and so I've tied these 4, 5, and 6. Those books are secondary characters that were fairly popular from the first. And in this book, and the other thing I do in my world, whether it's Lion's Den or Rakes of Mayhem or any of the smaller novellas and stuff that we write, I try to keep my characters are all connected within an interconnected world. So I've got the Dragonblade world like in the Lion's Den, but then I have my connections too, so that in any of my books, you're going to be able to see characters that you might have seen in another one, even though all of my books can be read individually or within the series. So that's the same with this one. But this book was really kind of fun to write. It was the first time I've ever has somebody fully assume someone else's peerage personality. But it's a story full of suspense. It has mystery, and it has two happy ever afters. Two. Yeah,
Oh,
it was kind
I
of,
bet
yeah. And
it
so on my
is.
pants, I write by the seat of my pants, sort of on my plotting. I get the general course, and then the characters kind of tell you what to do as we all kind of figured out. And in this one, there was one that begged for another, happily ever after, and it seemed to fit with the next books. So I did it. And so you can look for two, and I'm not trying to spoil it, so I won't spoil it. But the book starts out with the secondary character from the Marquess. We've always worried about whether to call it Marquis or Marquess. So the Marquess of Mischief. Anyway, he is the brother to the heroine in that book, and in that book there was a woman that had fallen, and she was in a wheelchair, so she had sort of some challenges on that, and they found their happily ever after. But Gerald Lawrence is her brother, and Gerald in the first book, he acts debonair, and he's just very, there and stuff. But before he got to that point, he kind of wanted to be that bad, rakish kind of person. He didn't, his father was really very virile and was, not really looking like he was going to be going anywhere. So I guess Gerald got in with the crowd that he just wanted to cause trouble, and he did. His father and his father's best friend had betrothed him and another young woman who was beautiful, was a friend of his, at birth or shortly after birth. And he didn't like that. He really wanted to pick his own person out, whether it was and he wanted to marry like his own parents for love. And to be betrothed like that didn't really set the scene for a love match. So he fought it, and it was airtight. So what Gerald does is he and his friends take bets on trying to do the most outlandish things. And Gerald goes a step too far. His betrothed, who's only like 16 at the time, is coming to town, and he's going to see her and her parents. And it's one of the season's biggest balls. And so Gerald has a bet with his friends that he can make out with the host's, the Earl's wife. So he's caught, the Earl's wife is known to be a hot to trot, and so she just kind of goes after these young men in secret. But she wasn't really hard for Gerald to nail. But what happened was she got a little more. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that the way it sounded. Anyway, they are out by the rose bushes and they're kissing, and that's really all they got to do. But anyway, he's out by the rose bushes, and he gets found by his fiance and her parents and his father. I mean, he wanted to try to divest himself of this woman so he could get back in there, and she was a little more excited than he was, and so it didn't work quite out the way he wanted to do it. Anyway, Gerald's family, his parents, banish him. They banish him they're so angry they can't. This is just
one step
too much. Far. So he's banished, and he goes under the direction of, I have an Angus in mind. So this gentleman named Angus Connolly, who is really just a man of business, and he's taken over trying to help refurbish this estate that his father bought. So Gerald goes away, and he can't come to London. He can't spend time at his parents' home. His assignment is to get with the program and to refurbish this estate and make something of himself. And he does. He does a brilliant job under this man's direction. I'm not giving away much of the story here, but he does a brilliant job. And then one stormy night, his past just rears up and slaps him in the face, kind of. This woman on a horseback who rides into his ranch, and she's obviously running from something. And so he realizes who it is once he pulls back her hood. It's his fiance. who he's still engaged to. They never broke the engagement, but he hadn't seen her in all those years. I mean, she's been, allowed to grow up and do all that kind of stuff, but there she is. And he is gobsmacked. He's never, when he had seen her before, she was just a young, barely more than a kid, kind of young woman, but now she's beautiful, and he is in love with her just immediately, and she falls from the horse when she sees him, and then she hits her head, and of course she has a slight case of amnesia, so she doesn't remember him, doesn't remember the what he did at that ball the last time she saw him, doesn't remember any of that. So the story is about how he has an opportunity now that he hadn't realized he would ever have, and that is to court her properly, or to make her fall in love with him, because she has no interest in him at all. She's, she likes him, but she's not really, she's not really sure who she is. And meanwhile, what's happened is the reason that she ran away is because her father had died, and there was an evil villain type, and he assumes the new heir. Her father didn't have a son, so it was going to go to an extended relative, and he assumes that relative's ID, becomes that person, and he's a horrible man.
He's a super villain,
very much,
like extra villainy.
Yeah, he's really bad, and he does some horrible stuff. And so when she starts regaining her memory, she remembers about her mother, who she thinks is dead, and her mother, the villain killed her mother, and her mother, leaves some information and stuff for her. But anyway, it all kind of comes together. So you have suspense, you have mystery, and you have love.
Two happily
ever afters. Yes.
Awesome.
It was fun to write, and I really love the series, and I like the way you can bring in, when you can have a connected world like that, you can bring in all these characters over and over again. And
yeah, I like that too. As a reader, I like that a lot. So.
What happened to this person? They've got children now. So anyway, that's
awesome.
It. That's to win a Viscount's heart.
So there's a book for everyone this week. So there's no reason for you not to find a Dragonblade book. There's a book for everyone this week. There are series that are well established. There are series that are brand new. There are interconnected worlds. There are tropes galore. So you can absolutely find something to read this week. And I'm going to say what I say every week, which is that Dragonblade books are the best deal on pre-order and release. So you want to grab them right away. If you don't get them right away, you can always read in Kindle Unlimited. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. I love having a full house, and I love hearing about all your stories.
It's been fun. So fun.
Evelyn.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you so much. Back next week at the same time.
Bye.